Hello, and welcome to the first series of Coffee Talk with Get Started in Sales. Our first guest, Nick Alley. Welcome. How are you, Nick?
I'm great. It's an honor to be the first guest here, just to be a part of the team. Very excited.
Nice. And of course, our lovely host, Morgan.
Hello. Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining. And Nick, really excited to share more of your story to help motivate other people that are in the same exact boat as you are in.
Yeah, and as promised, our big topic today is how to get interviews for sales jobs in this job market, in this economy. Nick's been doing a great job, and I want to say it's not a secret, but we want to know exactly what Nick is doing because he's doing such a great job of it. But we're not trying to make it a secret or anything like that, but we want to help people realize that, hey, here's the work, you got to do it. And that's really it. But I'm going to take it over to Nick. Nick, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Yeah, love to. So I come from the music world, actually. I've been in the game for since out of college, basically. Got my start in radio promotions. So I was one of those street team members a lot of people would see on the street, various shows, just promoting artists that we have on our radio stations throughout Boston region. That led to working in live entertainment for many years. First started off in kind of just venues within the Boston area, and that also blew up into festivals across the nation. So it's been a great ride. I've really enjoyed that part of my life, but I also am at a different stage after, being 22. It's a little bit different than being 29 to see kind of how life goes and, different goals after that amount of time. And now I'm looking to make a transition into the sales world.
That's true. It is a huge difference. Yeah, 22 when you're out of college, I think you're kind of faking being professional. It's like, all right, college is done. I got a degree and I'm going to get a job and be professional and serious now. But you're 22 and you're fresh out of college. Let's be serious. At 29, at your age now, I think you're exactly right. It's just like, hey, I got a few years under my belt now. I kind of know the direction I want to go. But can we rewind just a little bit? I just want to know more about the street promotions. I kind of forgot this part about you because to me, it's like that is like the door-to-door selling. Like that's the hardest job of a salesperson. Just talk to me about it. Like what was it like? What's your approach?
Sure. So I was quite often just more so acting as the brand or the brand ambassador for some of these radio stations. So we were just kind of put in perspective. I was doing more than just one. So each time I was doing a gig, it would be dependent on which one that I'm also representing. So you're seeing a whole bunch of different crowds as well, trying to understand exactly what type of genre and type of people come with that genre. And it really forces you to be knowledgeable of a lot of different fan bases and demographics. There might be a brand partnership that might be going on with a rap radio station that would be completely different than a country one. So it's a lot of a learning curve and to, try to seal these deals and how you would also create those connections over time and build rapport is just completely different each way you go. So while it was very entry level, it was a lot of, wow, okay, I'm being handed like lots of different things and lots of different events. And sometimes it was a very simple event where maybe you just go and you table and you just, talk to people about whatever, you're giving out free swag. But then there are times where I remember, just as a funny aside here, I had to wake up at like, I didn't even wake up. I was working a show the night before and I went from the show because we had to be on site at the radio station for 3 in the morning because they do obviously morning broadcasts early. So back in the day, we had a contest for like the best backyard house in New England, and people got to vote. So sorry, this is an aside now, but long story short, we ended up going to these people's house at like 4 o'clock in the morning with all of this radio equipment and prizes and everything in between. We get there, it's like tent city. Everybody's expecting it because we're doing like a party too at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we just get there, people are blaring Creed at like 4:30. It's wild. So anyway, long story short there, I got to learn how to be expecting the unexpected at the most craziest of times, and I think that's just the music industry.
No, that's awesome. And Morgan, do you hear all this? Like, I mean, I know I'm like the king of analogies, but I mean, there's so many analogies, and it's like it's just so parallel to prospecting. You got to know
Yeah.
your ideal customer profile, and that's what you're doing. You have to do your research, and everything is just so similar, and that's what we teach, is that how to transition from what you're doing now to just a quote unquote proper tech sales job.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
I mean, and
that's
it's
great.
definitely dealing with the unexpected. I mean, that's the gig that you're going after, and that's the gig that you've been doing. So and just rolling with it and making the most of it. So what was kind of like the tipping point for you, Nick, that like made you say, I'm gonna go after tech sales? Because granted, you're still making money, you're doing music, you love it. Like what made you shift to say, you know what, I'm gonna go after this?
Yeah, I wanted to go over tech sales. I had done a tech sales job actually during the pandemic. That's kind of how I got my first foray into that world. And funny way of even getting that gig was, I don't know if you guys remember this app called Clubhouse. Is that
Yes.
familiar
I
at
only
all?
know Mickey
I was
Mouse
on I think
Clubhouse.
I was on the waiting list for that one during, um,
The
yeah, like I
pandemic?
couldn't get in. Yeah, during the
Yeah.
pandemic, I couldn't get in.
So, right. So I think there was waitlist, and at the time it was amazing. So for those who don't know, basically it's almost like if Discord was in a more professional way where you could join a whole bunch of different professional group settings and networking groups, and they would have like every day somebody would be putting on some sort of like event where they would be talking about how to get your next job during a pandemic or like financial budgeting or whatever that might be. So I went to the one of the ones that people were hiring gigs for, and they were talking about an event tech company, and I was like, oh, that sounds like something I could mishmash both of my interest in. Had the interview, connected with the person who told me about the job. And again, I didn't know anything about sales at the time other than a non-traditional selling of various ways of getting tickets out. So it was a little bit of a shock for me. I was very happy that I got the job. But yeah, that was my first foray into it. And it was super cool to see like a more traditional sales way of it. Like you got to be creative. You got to still work with a lot of different people, try to understand which demographics are looking for events and trying to educate people on virtual and hybrid events in such a mysterious time of if events were even ever going to come back. Um, so it was an interesting just kind of wow, okay, I'm really just like going out there. I'm trying my best here to connect with people. And it was cool. Like sometimes, like obviously in a sales role, like you're gonna get the no's, people never want to talk to you again, whatever. But then there are people like, wow, like you guys really saved us, or like you were really able to like still help us get these funds for the year that we utilize a lot of our events for, or any of our marketing leads or anything like that. So to be a part of that is super cool at the end of the day. Like while it's still sales, it was still helping people achieve their goals of what they wanted to hit throughout the year during a crazy pandemic year. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how I found tech sales. And then that company kind of did a little bit of reorganization. So we ended up not staying together after the reorganization.
Well,
Um,
well, that's a good segue. So from
yeah.
there, so that's interesting. I didn't know how that's how you got that first job. So like let's bring it fast forward to today. Like how do you get your interviews now? How do you get your jobs now?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways I've approached it, and I think the that I would say for people who are looking for it is that you got to change your approach every now and then. And because I think people will get into this cycle of, okay, like it's not working, but it's gonna work. But if you keep doing something over and over again, it's literally the definition of insanity, right? So I always try to make,
So each message you have is a personal message to each company, each recruiter.
yeah, I think it's, well, yeah. So I mean, to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying too, I utilize like LinkedIn a lot. I think that's a underutilized thing that people who are in the job market don't utilize or are looking for a job, because I think a lot of times there's this like nervousness of what to even post. And like there's a lot of things you could post, but people don't know, like especially with the open to work banner, I feel like there's a lot of like stigma behind it and whatnot. And if they post, they're like, oh no, like, does this even like, do I have any credibility or anything? And for me, like, I've thought of ways how to keep at least that presence going, because I think we've talked about it in the past as well. Like, content is content, and you know,
Yeah.
sometimes my posts go off, sometimes I get like a like, but it's taken opportunities for people to take a look at my profile that I would have never even found otherwise. So doing that part of just being active, and at least once a week I'm posting on there just to start conversation, get, some eyes on me. But then you also have to do it the other way around too, of, reaching out to these companies that you really want to work for, doing the research and kind of going back off to what you were saying. Like, you can't just go in there with a generic email or reach out.
Yeah.
I usually try to find at least like that one bit of information. It doesn't have to be like anything crazy, but I mean, you can do a Google search, you can check the trades. Like, it's not that difficult to find something from a company who, oh, like we just went public, or oh, we just hit like 1 million sales, or we just hired, just like anything to at least show that you did a little bit of research, I think goes a long way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then the only other thing that I've really been doing to connect with these people for interviews at the moment is just literally cold emailing, cold calling, which is
Hmm.
crazy as somebody who's, not I'm employed at the moment. But, once you are able to figure out that system of how, people's emails are formatted for certain companies, I've gotten people who are like, don't do that. Like, I don't want to hear from you. But then other companies are like, oh my God, like, thank God, like somebody actually reached out to us, because you see all the time too, like there are people throwing lobs out on LinkedIn too of like, wow, we had 100 candidates that reached out for this job, but only two of them actually sent us an email saying what they'd be interested in. Or like I've been sending mock emails of what I would send to outbound prospecting or something like that. Like, just ways to stick out isn't that hard for people if they do the time and effort, kind of what you were saying as well, of figuring
Yeah.
out how to do it and just doing it.
No, that's 100% it. It's funny. You get the interview before you get the interview, meaning you have to show them while how to prospect into your job applicants. So if you're showing them what you're capable of even before you get that first interview, which is just kind of wild for me, like that's a whole different discussion there. It's just like, just give me the interview first and I could prove it. But that's not the way companies want to do it. It's just like, hey, reach out to the CEO first and then start reaching out to everyone else, and see, they want to see how you kind of attack your prospecting first before they even interview you. So
Right.
that's a great strategy. Yeah, nice job.
So it sounds like you've tailored your messaging for each one that you've reached out to, but you're also going different methodologies in terms of like you're going LinkedIn, you're going cold email, you're doing cold calling to get them. Um, Tell me more about how you've identified what kind of companies you're going to go after. What's kind of like your dream job?
Yeah. I'm really looking for an organization that is is growing but also established. I don't know if that's the best way to say that, but I have after like doing a few months of basically prospecting companies,
Yeah.
and being from a startup before, I do love the startup world. I think there's some opportunity, but I'm also looking long term to grow and just like learn myself. And I know a lot of these bigger companies understand kind of like have more traditional training things going on. Um, there's a lot of opportunity to network with people who have grown or already gone through these type of things. So would love to go through something, in that world. But also when it comes to looking for these tech companies, I've also been looking for companies that are really solving a need too. And I think a lot of people will say that they're solving a need, but there's a lot of competition, or they are not marketing it the right way. Like I also am talking to a lot of these people that I think I'm interested in, but like again, maybe they're not even communicating with me when I am reaching out to them. So like I'm getting flags of like good companies and bad companies, and I'm obviously not going to put anyone on blast, but I think again, if you're not doing the trial and errors of yourself, like you might go into these companies, you're like, this is not what I expected it to be. But if you are doing it prior to that, did that answer your question, Morgan? I'm not sure if I.
Yeah, but I'm curious. Tell me a little bit more about like the specific examples of like the red flags that you've gotten and also some positive things that you've seen. And obviously you don't have to name companies, but like give the listeners a little bit more of the specifics that you're experiencing.
Sure. So, for example, I had applied for a role back in like April or so, and somebody reached back. I was like, "Hey, I'm so sorry we couldn't connect in April, but we did keep you on file for May when we were hiring for our next round of cohorts." And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" Like, I'm glad that like obviously I was a little upset that I was just kind of putting my application out into no man's land, but I was happy that they were transparent enough to be like, hey, like that's on us for not communicating that we couldn't give you a job beforehand, or like you didn't even get like an automated response or anything like that.
Yeah.
Also green flag anybody who is giving me feedback, because I understand that, some of these companies are having like hundreds of, I wouldn't say thousands, but maybe they are getting hundreds of thousands of applicants
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's, I've gotten feedback where we can't provide feedback right now, but, keep an eye out for our career page. And I mean, when people do go out of their way to just even tell me, hey, like, we would have loved to see XYZ during your interview, or, this happened instead internally. So it's like, all right, that's cool. Like, it doesn't really require too much for me to know. Like, it helps me with my own interviews and things as I'm going through the job interview process. So I do love people who are at least able to communicate, because that's usually a good sign of like, okay, like it was a no for right now, but maybe in the future when the next things open up, like I could keep going. And I think that's also, just a segue to prior, or not a segue, but an aside from our previous conversation. People don't follow up a lot. And I think there's a lot of that animosity of just once they are not hired or they get a no, like they won't continue to maintain the relationships for these jobs that they want. And I think that's really not the best way to go about that. And just to keep in
Yeah.
contact with people, and to, hey, just check in every few months, because at least it shows like, oh, okay, like they were actually interested. But I digress. Bad signs. I recently set up, like I recently was given a job, and I know that they were kind of startup-y, whatnot, but I wanted to negotiate my salary, which a whole nother topic we can go into about,
Yeah.
worth.
That's a
But
beast.
what'd you say?
I just said that's a beast, but yes.
Yeah, right, right. But when I told them, like I was very transparent, like, hey, like, thank you so much for the offer. Like, I'm super excited to get started. Would love to talk about salary, wage, benefits, all that jazz when you have a moment. And it took them like a week to get a hold of me. And I was like, okay, like, and like I got an email to like waiting for what was going to be my boss. I had to reach back out myself to be like, hey, like just checking in, like what's going on here? And they were like, oh, I completely forgot about you. Sorry. And that was like crazy to me. Like, how do you forget an employee? Like it's your job is almost it is your livelihood at the end of the day, right? It's a
Yeah.
big part of your
Yeah.
life. So to put that emphasis of not even really, I don't know, it spoke a lot to me about that company and how that was run. So I'm glad I dodged the bullet there. But that's just
Yeah.
obviously the extreme example. But I think It's yeah, it's a bloodbath out there at the moment for sure, but I think it's being positive and keeping yourself motivated helps.
No, that's great. We have like 5 more minutes left. So Nick, I want to make sure we get everything in. So like,
Please.
let's wrap it up. We're gonna have three last questions for you. So one is the like, I guess the biggest lesson that you have for like from your interviews or from your process right now, slash, or like the biggest advice you would give to someone who's just starting their job search right now.
Okay, I would say be prepared to learn during the process. I think I am completely different from when I was starting my job hunt to where I am now, especially after working with you guys for the last few months. I've gone at my approach is completely different. Before I was kind of blindly applying, and now I'm able to categorize what I want, what these companies are giving me. If I have to compromise, like, sometimes you just gotta, but it might work out long term for yourself. So I think one, just kind of prepping yourself that if you really want something, it might be a while. Like, keep an eye out for these companies that you really want because they might not have a job opening that you're qualified for right away. But, just to check weekly or making those connections for when it is happening, because I think that's also huge of having that people are always in the back of your mind once you start that connection. And I've had plenty of people who are like, oh, hey, like it's finally time. Like we're finally hiring for our next cohort. And I'm like, great. Like, I'm glad it took like, 3 months, but like I've fostered the relationship with the person from this company. And now it's time to actually. So I think just, kind of what we were talking about before, making sure that we're utilizing the network,
Yeah.
preparing yourself for things, and just getting creative during the time while you are during job hunting. Like if you need to find another job during downtime, I'm freelancing still on the side while I'm job hunting. So take it easy, breathe a little bit, and don't
Uh,
work.
I like that. And then, second question, is there anything, speaking of being creative, is there anything like that you thought of, this would be a good idea, but it's kind of like out of the norm,
Mm.
but you haven't tried yet?
Regarding, sorry, could
Just
you?
job searching. Yeah, just be like, like this would be a great idea, but that's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think we talked about this internally not too long ago,
Yeah.
but I am really interested on how what a video platform or short form content, especially on LinkedIn, could look like. I think there's like a little bit of discrepancy of some people love it, some people don't. Like they're over, like there's too much video content now. But at the end of the day, like content's content and people love to consume that. So I think that it would be interesting to try to do like kind of something of this nature where you're putting your face to a name, you're able to see your personality a little bit more. People are able to understand like exactly who they're working with rather than just somebody typing over things. Like I think that that could be a really cool foray for people to get into because not a lot of people have figured out how to break into the LinkedIn market or algorithm yet. So if you're trying
Yeah.
to think of something to
100%.
get great, I would go that route.
Yeah. And then last one, what's one tool that you couldn't live without, basically, for your job search? Software or anything.
Yeah. LinkedIn.
It doesn't have to be software too. It could be my notebook.
Oh, I do use my notebook a lot. But I'm an old school notebook guy. Like I love writing notes
Writing.
I have a
Yeah, me too.
calendar.
That's
Yeah, it just feels good to be like either checking stuff off in person or whatnot. So, but I would say LinkedIn. I think
yeah.
LinkedIn, I've seen people we've talked about this before too, but I've seen people who have taken LinkedIn and they've become like LinkedIn influencers. I've seen people who have taken LinkedIn and they tell their whole life story and it works out for them. I've seen people who are just funny on it. Like the other day, I saw somebody who, instead of having the open to work little symbol on their profile picture, they changed it to desperate, which is just like, it was like so funny and it was really relatable like during the moment. And I was like, oh my God, like you saw the engagement that she had too. And like people were coming out of the woodwork. They were like, this is amazing. Market it. Like, I think she was a social media girl too. She was like, whatever, I have no shame. And she got flooded with, oh my God, we're looking for somebody for social media for this. Like we get, this is the wage, like and these are just comments too. So like
Yeah.
I think that again, LinkedIn can be utilized as so many things as you make it as. And it's a completely different type of social media comparatively to your Instagrams, your Facebooks, TikToks, whatever, but it is what you make of it at the end of the day.
Yeah. And
Yeah, that's great.
I love the parallels in this conversation of it truly is. This is your first sales job is selling yourself. And like the methodologies that you're using and all your lessons learned are the same things that an AE that's been in tech sales for 20 years would be saying. Like try different things, keep it fresh, be creative, be authentic, be persistent. These are all things that you apply down the career path. And it's really, this is your first chance to show companies that you know how to do that. So I really appreciate like your time and your comments and your stories and your experience and just being authentic and real with us and trusting us to help advise you in this way. But it's truly inspiring and I'm really impressed with how many interviews you continuously get, but it's very clear. You're being methodical, you're being diligent about it, and you're getting it. So I know that you're going to land at the best company.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
do it
Thanks,
without
Nick.
y'all. I appreciate it.
If anybody has any questions, is there a good way to reach you?
LinkedIn.
I was gonna say
This is like an ad for LinkedIn now.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
LinkedIn, if you're listening too, you can always get my line. I don't know if some people don't know this, which is crazy in 2024, but you can make your own URL on LinkedIn. So if you haven't done that, I would say go into your settings and figure it out. But if you are looking for me personally, I'm like, I think it's a slash and then Ali M. Nicholas is my URL ending to find me.
Nice. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate your time. And if anybody has any questions, you could also email us at info@getstartedinsales.com. And if you want, we also have a job pipeline Google spreadsheet that Nick uses a lot too, and we'll share that with you. Just mention job pipeline in the comments. Thanks for listening, and thanks again, Nick, for spending some time with us.
Of course.
Thanks, Nick.